Now, I don't really want to call them soft skills because it diminishes the value of what those skills really are. In fact, ironically, the idea behind hard versus soft skills came from the military, the United States Army, where how to use tools, like if I'm an infantry guy, knowing how to use rifles is something that I need to learn. And then consequently, soft skills took a backstage, not realizing that the people who started leading troops during war are people who have high degree of their ability to deliver soft skills. Nowadays, especially in the days and the age of AI, it is more important for us to become more of what we already are, being humans. In fact, I did mention I was in Poland last week for SQL Day Light, and I did a keynote, which for them was kind of surprising because I normally just do technical sessions. But the idea behind the talk was all about how we can become better at what we already are, which is being human. And this this topic for me is very, very near and dear to my heart because, for one, the idea behind this presentation came out of my interaction with the late Robert Davis, and I did say late, Microsoft Certified Master. He used to run a Microsoft Certified Master's program at Microsoft, left Redmond, moved to New York City, joined a financial company, a hedge fund, if I'm not mistaken, and he was like working to a point where every time I'm in New York City, I would always send him an email saying, hey, let's grab some lunch, let's catch up while I'm here. And he's always busy. Like, he's always trying to get some work done. 3 years in New York City, he decided he wants to go back. They moved back to Seattle, and 2.5 months after they moved back, he died of a heart attack. Yeah. And I told myself, I used to be that guy. And I used to tell people workaholic is my middle name. I was the founder of Workaholics Anonymous. And in cases where it's tempting to always work, because we've created that culture where putting in a lot of work is worn as a badge of honor. In fact, I tell a lot of the people in my peer group, I think one of the reasons I got attracted to tech is, there's this Silicon Valley culture where you're burning the midnight oil, you're working as hard as everybody else. And because that's the culture, you embrace it, it's normal, not realizing that there's only so much you could do. In fact, nowadays, people are now trying to do what is called the 996. I don't know if you've heard of it. 996 is I'll work 9 hours per day for 9 consecutive days, or 9 days something, and then 6 days a week. And they are trying to promote that, the hustle culture, where it's all about trying to work themselves to death. By the way, this is my contact information. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions, and also feel free to engage. Have questions, type them on the chat window. Happy to answer those questions. But let me start off with this: no DBAs, or let me rephrase that: no person, nobody on their deathbeds ever said something like this. I wish I had spent more time with my database servers, or I wish I had spent more time with my work. In fact, I talk to like nurses, people who are in hospice care, and they do interviews of people in their senior years, and more often than not, they would say, I wish I did not work so hard when I was younger. I wish I spent more time with my family. I wish I spent more time enjoying life. And the one thing that I've learned so far is, while we have created we have innovated and we've invented so many things like LLMs, self-driving cars, we've created so many of these things, we have not yet invented a time machine where we can go back to the past and recreate some of the things that we wished we created. And this is why it is very, very important for us to really focus on the things that matter, right? And I've collected some of these stories. One from 2024, just last year, where a Wells Fargo employee was found dead at her desk days after she left. She last clocked into work. There was one story here from way back 2007. I was still back in Singapore when this happened. It broke out, and coming from a country like Singapore, which is kind of ironic, I worked for a Japanese company, Fujitsu, who are well known for like 12-hour workdays, 6-day workdays, in Singapore, a country where they pride themselves on working hard. That's how I learned work-life balance. Ironic, isn't it? Because for us, what's important was what results are we delivering? And it's in situations like this where we really need to know, and we really need to take a step back and understand what really matters to us. There's another study. This goes back from 2021. Long working hours, killing 745,000 people a year. A year. And sometimes part of what drives this is twofold. One, it's the lack of self-confidence. We feel like we're not good enough, we're not smart enough, we're not enough, and so we had to do more in order for other people to see that we are enough. So there's that sense of fear of acceptance. Nobody's going to accept me because I'm not working hard enough. On other end of the spectrum is our culture. Again, I was born and raised in a culture where working hard, we call it good work ethic. Like if you're not working 12-hour days, you don't have a good work ethic. And Nico was like, imposter syndrome. But we have to start looking at it from a totally different perspective. And this is something that I've learned a lot working in operations where we had to be on call, either working normal 16-hour days, and where we break down because we're not machines, right? And then it hits home, and I did tell the story of the late Robert Davis, and the very reason why I have this presentation was because of it. And last year at the PASS Summit, we had, or they set up what is called the community tree. It's a tree in the community hall where you can write the names of the people who have gone on, who have died, and I wrote Robert's name on a piece of paper and put it on the tree. And unless it happens to us, we think, oh, I'm good, right? I'm young, I can still do this until, I don't know. But again, in our decades of innovation and invention and new discovery, we have still not yet invented a time machine where we can erase some of the things that we have done in the past. And this is something, for me, it's just a wake-up call, okay? And I talk about the myth of the work-life balance because it is interesting. There are so many things that we embrace as working professionals. There's so many things that we've embraced, like retirement, for instance, or work-life balance, because we have created a culture where I need to go on vacation because I'm just so dead tired working. And so we try to embrace this concept of work-life balance because we believe that it is real. And I want to propose something that, oh, by the way, let me go back to this, that it is a myth. Because all the time we have this notion of we want to work longer hours because we need to get a lot of stuff done. Oh, and by the way, we're also a byproduct of our productivity. My former CEO once said, it's the curse of being very good at what you do. You get so many things done, people will give you more to do. In fact, I believe it was Bill Gates who said, if you want something done, give it to the lazy person. But in corporate environments nowadays, if you want something done, give it to the busiest person. So if you're productive, people will see that you get more stuff done, they will give you more things to do. And so we struggle to spend meaningful time with our family. How many hours do we actually spend with our family versus the amount of hours we spend at work? When we struggle to maintain a healthy lifestyle, it's ironic because tech has now become one of the riskiest jobs in the world. We're not working in oil rigs. We're not working on power generating facilities like power plants. We're not working in mine fields. We're sitting at home or sitting at a desk, and we have become, or our work has now become, one of the riskiest jobs on the planet. Ironic, right? And when we struggle to maintain a spiritual lifestyle, and I don't mean religious, I mean time where you can be quiet, time where you can be, where you can connect with yourself and connect with the things outside of you and connect with people. And it's a spiritual engagement. In fact, we lost touch of the fact that work is supposed to be spiritual because of this whole thing where work is different from life. And that's why I argue, again, it's a myth. Because as we're doing our work, we wonder if there's any meaning to what we do. That's why I mentioned earlier, I propose there's no such thing as work-life balance. Because the reality is you cannot separate who you are from what you do. And here's the thing, especially in large corporate environments where they would tell you, leave your emotions out the door. Like, we're professional here. It's a common saying, like, leave your emotions out the. So are you telling me my creativity, my resourcefulness, my compassion for people, my empathy, I'm not going to take it with me at work? So how do you expect me to fine-tune that query and make a query faster if I don't exercise my creativity? If I don't exercise my resourcefulness? That's part of who I am. And there's no way that I can separate what I do, which is work, from who I am, which is life. For so long, companies have created this notion that work is simply work. Let's just be professional, is what you commonly hear in board meetings, in company meetings, in team meetings. Let's be professional, not realizing that we cannot really separate who we are, our life, from what we do. There are certain studies, and I don't want to be highly logical about this, because we can be so logical about everything, but if we're not getting stuff done, it's useless. But studies have shown that the amount of productivity, and I'll use this as an example, because I specialize in high availability. Nobody talks about the state of mind of the person dealing with an outage whenever an emergency happens. I'll give an example. When a company got bought over, Dell, VMware, or Broadcom. Here's a very good example, Broadcom buying VMware. I started talking to a lot of my friends who work at VMware and said, there's tension. There's tension in the company because we don't know who's going to get laid off. So imagine this, my database servers are offline and I'm calling VMware for support. You think he's concerned about you bringing your VMs online? No, he's more concerned about whether or not he's going to get fired today. How are you going to resolve that outage on your VM when the person who's supposed to help you is more concerned about whether or not he's going to get fired? Or whether or not he is going to have his job outsourced somewhere. And it's very, very difficult to get the most out of people, their creativity, resourcefulness, their productivity, if we don't bring in their wholeness in at work. The goal should never be work-life balance. goal should be balance. There should never be a separation between work and life. In fact, I highly encourage people to bring their whole self at work. And this is a very controversial idea because, again, most people would say, oh, let's be professional. Okay, so are you telling me I cannot show empathy to the engineer who's struggling because he's having a hard time at home, when in fact the entire platform is dependent on what he's doing? Eliminating the concept of work-life balance and simply focusing on balance will allow us to be fine and be okay with bringing our whole self into the picture when we go out and work. It's interesting because, again, whenever my customers would bring me in, I would ask questions about how are you doing, how's the family. It's like we're family. Why? Because it's very difficult to work with people who you are not in good terms with. And in most cases, outages happen, issues happen at work because teams are not talking to each other. Why are they not talking to each other? Because, well, this guy is always making me look stupid. And all of these things are internal conflicts which can be resolved if we simply bring our whole selves into it. Sometimes we ignore that because we try to be professional. Okay? The goal is to integrate the wholeness of who we are with what we do. I came up with this concept of a PDA principle to kind of simplify this. And PDA stands for three things. First, P, and hopefully my screen is not frozen. P stands for prioritize. Okay, identify the things that matter to you. It's important to realize that in our roles at work, there are things that matter to the company, there are things that matter to your team lead, there's things that matter to your team, there are things that matter to you. I emphasize things that matter to you because we're all in different phases of life. If you're fresh out of university, the only thing that matters to you right now is your career. That's the only thing that matters. And it's also interesting because that's the same thing that we tell the younger generation. When you're young, you work hard, you put a lot of effort in your career, but not realizing that they're also sacrificing a lot of those things to focus on their career. As you grow older, you decide you want to have a family, your priorities shift. Unfortunately, what happens is what became the priority in the first 7 years of your working life bleeds into the next 10, 15 years of your life. So when you were starting out, it's always, let me put in the work, let me put in the effort, and I want to advance my career as fast as I possibly can. You decide you want to have a family, but that's still the same focus and priority that you've had. It's also one of the reasons why you see a lot of people struggle with this. They started working, they put in a lot of work, they're now getting promoted, now they're a manager, and then they decided they want to have a family, but now they're a manager, they have this role that they have to maintain. And so their priority is still their work versus the new phase of their life where they now have to prioritize their family. And part of that is really understanding that wherever you are in your phase of life, you have to accept that. Acceptance of where you are in your life. Because again, starting out in your career is totally different from, I have a new family, I've got toddlers and I have to focus more on that, versus, my kids are grown up and I can focus more on something else. But understand, there's a reason why there's different phases of life. I kind of use the analogy of seasons. Okay, there's winter, spring, summer, and fall, and I'm not going to start singing, but every season comes with it the priority of that specific phase. Farmers don't plant crops in the winter. They relax, they enjoy. They do prepare in preparation for spring and summer. In summer, In spring they would plant, in summer they would take care of their crops, and they would also enjoy, because there's not enough time for them to just put in all the work, because come fall they would start harvesting their crops, and in the winter they can't really do anything, so they'll just take a step back. But phases should dictate what priorities you have in your life, and let those phases dictate and guide your priorities. The problem with most people nowadays is they have been afraid. People have been afraid of what's going to happen, especially with the introduction of AI taking over all of, well, especially with the news nowadays, and people are afraid that if they take a step back, they're going to get laid off. And again, it hits home. I had a couple of friends who got laid off from Microsoft, people who have been working for Microsoft for like 10 plus years, and they were thinking, no, I'm not going to get laid off. But it's the fear that drives these things. And the one thing that I've learned throughout my career is the fact that work is never going to go away. You'll always have projects, you'll always have responsibilities, you'll always have work. And here's what I also believe in. I don't have to worry about whether I can find a job tomorrow or next year. I'm not going to worry about that, despite the fact that the news will keep saying hundreds and thousands of jobs are going to get eliminated, or millions of jobs are going to get eliminated because of AI. But part of that is also your belief in yourself, that if I prioritize the things that matter to me, things will just happen. And for some, again, for technical professionals like us, that is very difficult to understand. I remember moving here in Canada back in 2008. This was right in the middle of the global economic crisis, where everybody was telling me, you're stupid. Why would you go there? That's where the global economic crisis started. I just said, I gut feel, I knew I had to do this. Logically, it didn't make sense. My priority back then was totally different. I don't care about the economy. I don't care about what's happening around the world, but I knew for a fact that I was meant to be here, and I did. It's very difficult to make decisions, especially if you're driven by fear. And one of the reasons I like showing news clips is that's the first thing people look at in the morning. They would look at the news, and then their entire day is dictated by what they've read. If you're afraid, if you're scared that you're going to lose your job, what makes you think you're going to be overly productive for the day? You won't be. Because now you're scared. Oh, I heard a couple of my friends that got laid off, and maybe I'm going to be the next one. Or again, using the example that I used earlier, Broadcom acquired VMware. Now all the VMware employees are scared because I might get laid off. Fear never made people make wise decisions. Never. When people make decisions based out of fear, it always ends up to be a survival instinct, a decision based out of survival. Next thing you know, okay, I don't know what to do next because I'm afraid of what's going to happen to me. Part of it, again, is understanding that there are different phases of life, and you have to know which phase of life you are in and enjoy it and embrace it. Your priorities should dictate that. One of the things we did was to homeschool my kids, and people were like, what are they going to learn? How's their social skills? How are they? And it's interesting because when people are telling you something about things that you do that are outside of the norm, they'll call you stupid, they'll call you crazy. And then 2020 came around when the whole world shut down and everybody's hunkered down because of the pandemic. We're like, wow, you guys are smart for putting your kids in homeschool. What used to be something stupid is now something that people celebrate. The important thing here is you really have to let your phases of life dictate your priorities or guide your priorities. Okay. D is for discipline. It's one of the most difficult things to do. You develop your daily habits that support your priorities. One of the things that I've done throughout my career, especially when I've learned how to slow down, is to discipline myself not to work too hard. It is very, very, very difficult. It's just like saying, I need to learn how to use my left hand when my dominant hand is my right hand. You have to develop habits every day that support your priorities. That's why you have to start with your priorities first. I prioritize my health. I prioritize my relationships. I prioritize my wellness. And so within my calendar, I would put action items. I would put things in my calendar that would support my priorities. Okay? Because the way I look at it, if it's not in your calendar, it's not going to happen. So put it on your calendar and try to stick to it. Okay? I did say try, because life happens to us. Okay? There's no such thing as a perfect day, because things will happen. At work, you may have your entire day written down for you. You have your calendar, you have your meetings all set up. If you don't put in within your calendar, if you don't put in the things that matter to you, meaning if you don't put in 15 minutes of exercise, if you don't put in 15 minutes of reflection time, if you don't put in 15 minutes of recreation, could be anything. 15 minutes of playing the guitar. If you don't put in 15 minutes of learning something new, then it's not going to happen. Why? If you have team calendar, somebody would say, oh, he's free. I'm going to book a meeting and take that free time. I read this poster on one of the McDonald's store from a couple of years ago. I think it was I was in high school from way back when. The poster said, if we don't take care of our customers, somebody else will. And that stuck with me because I kept telling myself the same thing. Instead of customers, I replaced it with myself. If I don't take care of myself, nobody else will. That means if you don't take care of your health, if you don't take care of your improving your technical skills, if you don't take care of your relationships, if you don't care of your emotions, nobody else will. It's our responsibility. In fact, no doctor, no pharmaceutical company, nothing, even if you have a ton of money, if you don't take care of yourself, nobody else will. Like I said, I did say try, because life happens to us, and don't feel bad. Don't feel bad if your calendar did not happen the way you want it to. But that's also the reason why it's called discipline. The important thing here is you try. I struggle a lot with following my calendar and following all the activities that I put in my calendar when I'm traveling. Big item there is sleep and exercise. But what I do is, if I don't do these exercises when I'm traveling, I will find an alternative that would at least get me to do something. Like, for instance, I have a set of exercise routines that I do every day, but if I'm traveling, I can't do that. So what I do, I'll just go and walk around the city and explore. So I'm doing a couple of things there. One is I'm exercising by walking, and two, I'm enjoying the city. It is foolish to believe that just because everything is perfect, everything's in the calendar, doesn't mean it's going to be a perfect day. No, again, life happens. Okay, we're not robots. A is for accept. I think I've mentioned this earlier. I gave it away as early as when I was talking about priorities. Accept, and acknowledge. We can't do it all. We can't do it all. I think it was Zig Ziglar who once said, you can have everything in life that you want, which translates to you can actually do and achieve everything you want. But he didn't say all at once. The wisdom there is that you can really achieve what you want in life. You can have everything you want in life. But you also have to go back to letter P, which is prioritize. What do you really want? Can't want everything. And it may not necessarily be something that I want for me. Maybe a friend of mine wants it and I feel like I want it too because he wants it. So is it really what I want? Or maybe it's just something that he wants and I felt like I want it too. You go back to prioritize. What is it that you want? The lifestyle, the the career, everything about you today is a byproduct of the choices that you make. Some people complain about, hey, I don't like my job, I hate it, I'm miserable. Well, that's a byproduct of the choices that you made. If you don't like it, go change it. It's just like watching TV. If you don't like what you're seeing, if you don't like what you're watching, grab the remote and change the channel. But realize the fact that we cannot do everything. And while it is true that you can actually achieve everything you want in your life, that comes from knowing exactly what it is that you want. And that does not mean it's all going to happen at the same time. Sometimes we look at the timeline as if it's all going to happen today. I joke around the fact that the very reason why Amazon Prime is a thing is because we wanted our stuff yesterday. And so Amazon decided, I'm just going to give you Prime. Fast food, internet, the technology, everything warps our perception of time that we realize, hey, I'm so impatient that certain things actually take time. Okay? And accepting our limitations is not a sign of weakness. It's actually a declaration of confidence. When I know my limitations, and this is something that I also tell my customers on the side, I do executive advisory for startup companies. One of the things that I tell my customers is you can't be everything to everybody. And that's a limitation. Because if you're trying to be everything to everybody, you become nobody. When you accept that there are things that you cannot do, you're also making way and making time for the things that you can do, which means you're giving yourself the opportunity to become very good at it, which also gives you a lot of opportunity to grow and learn and have more opportunities to try new things, even though you feel like, oh, I can't try this, or I can't figure things out. The idea behind this, again, is just knowing for a fact that I'm not a unicorn. I'm not Superman. Even Superman has limitations. He has kryptonite, and he can't do anything with kryptonite. But because he recognizes that, he knows for a fact that he has to either avoid it or find ways on how to work around it. Knowing and accepting our limitations is a declaration of confidence. I can work in my strength zone, and all my weaknesses or my limitations, I can either outsource it or ask for help from it, but I will focus on my strength zone. And when you're operating on your strength zone, you become more productive, you become happier because now you're accomplishing more, you see growth. That's part of it. Okay? We need a better path. And like I said, the idea behind the concept of work-life balance for me is really just breaking down this idea that we've embraced from people who went before us, people who have worked for years, and they will tell you work-life balance. But when you start to think about it, when you start to question it, just be curious about it and ask, so why do you feel like you need work-life balance? And they start telling you a lot of the reasons why. They work too hard, they hate their jobs, they are miserable, they don't like their boss. And a lot of these things are outside of their control. The one thing that is in their control is making the choice on what kind of work that they want to do, the kind of companies that they want to work for, the culture, the company culture that they want to be a part of. These are all things that they can control. But it's different, or rather, it's difficult for people to accept that reality, especially if you're living in fear. Oh, what if I can't find a job? What if nobody wants to hire me? And so it becomes a decision of I'll just take the next job available, regardless of whether or not I'm going to be happy there, regardless of whether or not I like the job, whether or not I'm growing in that job. I'll just take it because I need a paycheck. Okay, imagine looking at your life like this wheel. And I've taken this concept from Zig Ziglar, the concept of the wheel, the balance of the wheel. You have different aspects of the wheel: the intellectual, the emotional, spiritual, and the physical. It is important that you do your best, we do our best to tweak different sections of this wheel. Why is that? If you don't take care of your physical body, then I doubt that you're ever going to be productive at work. I doubt that you are going to be able to do things that you're supposed to be doing. If you spend more time on the intellectual, and this is something that a lot of tech professionals are now starting to realize, especially in the age of AI, if you spend so much time on the intellectual, meaning I want to build my technical skills, I want to learn a lot of these technical new platforms, new tools, new technologies, then I ignore the emotional part of this. I ignore the spiritual part of this. So imagine this, imagine this as a wheel or tire in your bicycle. When you tighten one portion of that tire, it becomes imbalanced. The next thing you know, you can't move properly. So going back to that example, a lot of technical professionals are now realizing this, especially in this new age of AI. They focus so much on the technical aspects of their definition of their self that they forgot, hey, we're human beings. We need emotional connection. We need empathy. We need caring in the company. Next thing you know, you hear a lot of these news from bigger companies. Oh, AI is going to take over their job. Sure, the junior developer is now being replaced by Copilot, because Copilot can do the exact same thing as what the junior developer can do. Not realizing that the junior developer could have built the emotional capabilities to lead a team, something that Copilot can never do. And because they spent so much time developing their intellectual skills, they forgot, oh, I need to take care of my physical body. I need to take care of my wellness, because if not, then how will I be able to write code if I'm too tired or I'm too exhausted because I did not take care of my body? Same thing with spiritual. Our creativity, our resourcefulness comes from the fact that we're spiritual beings, regardless of what you believe in. And we connect with people. In fact, everything that we came up with is a byproduct of our creativity. Inventions, new innovations are a byproduct. We create something out of nothing, and that's a spiritual action. You create something out of nothing. Only humans can do that. LLMs can't. You have to feed it data in order for it to come up with something. But we humans have the capacity to create something out of nothing, and that comes from our creativity, our resourcefulness, and our connection with ourselves. What's really interesting is the fact that as kids, we were so creative, we were so resourceful, we imagined things that have not existed. And as we grew older, we lost touch of that ability to be creative, to be resourceful, to be imaginative. Why? Because society has conditioned us, hey, be realistic. And so us being realistic has led to letting go of some of the things that are very natural to us, like creativity, resourcefulness, that we now have to stick with. This is what exactly everybody's doing, so I have to stick with this because that's what everybody's doing. We need to maintain balance in all aspects. Okay, it's really ironic that we decide we want to take care of our physical bodies when it starts to break. And I'm reading this book called When the Body Says No, where it focuses so much on the mind-body interaction. And here's the thing, You can ignore your body, you can ignore your physical well-being all you want until your body will force you to start making changes for it to return to what it's supposed to be. And again, it's interesting because we spend so much time, again, we're all in tech, working 12-hour days, we barely get enough sleep. The next day you do it all over again, and by the end of the week, all you do is crash in bed and catch up on sleep, only to do the exact same thing come Monday morning, wake up, well, work 12 hours. It's interesting. And then we wonder why we can't get a lot of stuff done. We wonder why we're not productive. It's because of the fact that we're forgetting our wellness, our physical well-being. That's why we need to maintain balance in all of these aspects. And it is very difficult to do this if we don't stop and do some form of self-assessment and self-reflection every single day, or even once a week. It's interesting because when at work, we do what is called performance reviews with our boss. And we do it, what, every 6 months or once a year? We have to wait for like 6 months to a year before we even do something like performance review with our boss. When it should have, when we should be doing it on a regular basis, like even once a week. How did I do this week? What's something that I need to change? And if we don't do that intentionally, something else will force us to do that. Like your body would crash because you're too tired. And all of a sudden you can't even do anything. So either we set the intention of doing what's best for us, or we let nature take its course and do what it does best, which I hope is not something that we end up doing. A balanced life is really all about just like riding a bike. It's interesting because a lot of people think that when you live a balanced life, it's mostly effortless. Here's the reality though. When you're riding a bike, you don't feel like you're putting in a lot of effort. But the reality is the only reason why you can ride a bike and not fall over is, number one, your entire body is working so hard to keep you balanced. And number two, you're moving forward. It is very difficult to ride a bike, keep it balanced while staying still. In order for you to ride a bike, enjoy the bike ride, while at the same time keeping balance, is for you to do everything that you can to keep the bike balance and also move. You gotta keep moving. I used to think that it will require a lot in order to maintain a balanced life, until I realized everything in life is just a matter of habits. And as those habits get embedded into our day-to-day, it becomes a part of us. I used to average between 4 to 6 hours of sleep every day. And the reason I was like that a couple of years ago was because I need more hours in the day to get stuff done. When I started changing my way of thinking, excuse me, and told myself, look, I can get stuff done in the shortest time possible, and I prioritized my health. I started getting like 7.5 to 8 hours of sleep every day. I started exercising, and next thing I know, I'm still getting a lot of stuff done with very little time, which means I've trained myself with the habits that I built to do more with less. And it is tempting that when you get to that level of productivity, you take in more. I've learned the art of saying no. Going back to P, the priorities, I've learned the art of saying no, and no is a complete response. Sometimes it is very difficult to say no because we've been conditioned to say yes to anything. And saying no for us means we're letting people down. No. Saying no is simply drawing the boundaries, and that is part of living a balanced life. So every time you think about work-life balance or balance in general, think of it as a continuous effort, meaning you still have to put in a lot of work. I presume most of you brush your teeth, I hope, I guess. Nobody today, after doing it for decades, think about how to brush their teeth. They just do it. Same thing, when you've put your priorities as these are the things that I need to do, and you discipline yourself to do the things that you've prioritized, next thing you know, you're actually doing them without even thinking about it. You're still doing the work, but it's gone from it was difficult in the beginning to now making it a part of your life. I met somebody last week. He's a data platform MVP, and he runs marathons. And I asked him, how do you prepare for marathons? Because I'm planning on preparing for a marathon. And he said, well, I run 3 times a week, 5 to 6 kilometers per run. So that's 6, 12, 18 kilometers per week. Like, wow, how do you do that? You just do it. And next thing you know, it's already part of his schedule. So next time that he needs to run a marathon, he doesn't even have to prepare because he's already made it a part of his everyday schedule. And, working as a consultant, working in tech, and making it part of that, and also having time for family, having time to be involved in technical community, speaking at events. For some people, that's a lot of things to do, but in his case, he made it work because he prioritized the things that mattered to him. He put it in his calendar and had the discipline to follow through all of the things that he's done and accept that anything that does not fit his schedule is not going to get done. And it's work. You got to put in the work in order to live a balanced life. The work diminishes and it becomes a part of who you are. Next thing you know, you're just doing it because it's who you are. You're exercising because it's who you are. You are connecting with people because it's who you are. You're spending time doing the things that matter to you because it's who you are. It's no longer work. Your subconscious, your brain is still working. It's just second nature. This is the true meaning of what a balanced life is like. And again, for the longest time, I thought you really have to embrace the idea that work-life balance is, I'm not going to do anything. Nope. You are doing the work. It just so happened that it has become a part of who you are. It's become a second nature that you don't feel like doing any work. I did ask that question earlier. I'm pretty sure nobody of you here thinks about putting in the work when you're brushing your teeth. It's just second nature. But that doesn't mean your hand is not moving, your brain's not working, your hand-eye coordination is not doing their work. It still is. It has just become a part of who you are. It's second nature, so you feel like it's effortless. And that's what it is when it comes to a balanced life. It really is like riding a bike. Create a plan. Again, prioritize, list the things that matter to you, discipline, put it in your calendar, and then just accept, create a plan, because failing to plan is planning to fail. I'm going to wrap up with this. We need to intentionally plan our life before someone else does it for us and throw it out of balance. Remember what I mentioned earlier about the team calendar that we have at work? If somebody sees an empty slot, they would use that opportunity to book a meeting or to give you something to do. So it's either you putting your priorities in your calendar or somebody else will, and it will, I can guarantee you, it will throw you out of balance. I would like to open the floor for questions. And again, I really appreciate you having me here. Thank you.
Thanks.